Have you ever wondered if the story you know about Cain truly reflects the whole truth? Have you ever stopped to think about what happened after he was marked by God and walked away from the divine presence? Leave us your comment and tell us if you've ever felt there was an inexplicable void in that account. Because what we're going to explore today is not just a forgotten chapter, it's a crack in the traditional narrative that could reveal a secret hidden since the earliest days of humanity. Who did Cain join with? Was there a forbidden race before Eve? This mystery could forever change the way you understand the book of Genesis, the original sin, and the spiritual lineage that descends from Adam. In Genesis 4:16-17, we read something that, if not observed closely, seems like a minor detail. So Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod, east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. But where did this wife come from? If Adam and Eve were the first humans created and Abel was already dead, how was it possible for Cain to find a wife? This is one of the most unsettling, and at the same time, most ignored questions in the entire Bible. Some theologians have tried to explain it by assuming that Adam and Eve had many daughters who were not directly mentioned in the texts. However, this answer seems inadequate given the depth of the biblical silence, especially when one considers the spiritual symbolism and the hidden clues in the original Hebrew text. When the verse says that Cain went east of Eden to a place called Nod, whose name in Hebrew means wandering or exile, it's not just referring to a geographical location, but to a spiritual dimension. Cain was marked, cursed, and expelled from the presence of God, entering a territory where the divine presence no longer reached him directly. And it was there, in that land of exile, that he found a wife. But who inhabited Nod? How could there have been people in that place if humanity was just beginning? This is where the scriptures invite us to go beyond the literal text and search in the echoes of ancient Hebrew thought, in rabbinic traditions, and in the shadows cast by the early chapters of Genesis. Some midrashim, ancient Jewish commentaries, suggest that there was a creation prior to the man of clay, a spiritual humanity, perhaps ethereal, perhaps fallen. Other, more mystical texts, like fragments of the Zohar, hint at the existence of hybrid beings, products of a mixture between the celestial and the earthly, beings that were neither fully human nor fully divine. Could this be the reason why God did not destroy Cain after his crime, but instead marked him and sent him away? Because Cain's destiny was not oblivion, but to be part of a hidden lineage that would bring profound consequences to the spiritual history of humanity. A lineage born of a mixture, of a union with a forbidden race. Origen, one of the church fathers of the 3rd century, spoke about the sons of the angels and linked them to the sons of God, mentioned in Genesis 6, who joined with the daughters of men. Although that passage comes after Cain's story, some scholars have suggested that the sons of God, Bene Ha-Elohim in Hebrew, could have existed earlier, and that the daughters of men were not the only ones who caught their attention. What if Cain, marked by his crime and separated from Adam's pure lineage, was drawn to those beings who inhabited the dark boundaries of Eden? The Ethiopian tradition of the Book of Enoch, considered apocryphal by many churches but revered by others, describes the rebellion of angels called Watchers who descended to earth and mingled with human women, giving rise to a race of giants known as the Nephilim. But some ancient fragments mention that even before this fall, there were already beings wandering the earth, specters of a prior creation, remnants of a judgment before the Garden of Eden. Could it be possible that Cain found in Nod not a human woman, but one of those entities? A creature with a human appearance, but without God's original blessing. Some exegetes have noted that Genesis is not a chronological account, but a symbolic one. What seems like a sequence of events is often an overlay of spiritual realities. When it says that Cain knew his wife, the Hebrew word used is yada, which implies deep intimacy, not only physical, but spiritual. This connection may have been more than a simple reproductive act. It could have been a fusion of lineages, one human broken by sin and another of mysterious origin, perhaps celestial, perhaps corrupt, but undoubtedly forbidden. And here is where the narrative becomes even more disturbing, because from that union's womb, Enoch was born. Not the righteous Enoch, who was taken by God, that one is a descendant of Seth, but another Enoch, mentioned as the first builder of cities. In other words, Cain and his lineage not only survived, they prospered, founded civilizations, developed culture, but all of it was built on the foundation of spiritual exile, a civilization without an altar, without worship, without God. What if I told you that some scholars believe that Cain's descendants founded pagan civilizations, spiritually deviant, that perpetuated idolatry, violence, and corruption? What if this forbidden race didn't disappear, but infiltrated the structures of power, the architecture of Babel, the kingdoms that rose against Israel? The echo of this forbidden union resonates throughout all of Scripture. That's why the Bible repeatedly emphasizes the importance of keeping the lineage pure, not mixing with other nations, not taking foreign wives. Because the spiritual war has always been a war of seeds, the offspring of the woman against the offspring of the serpent, Genesis 3:15. And if Cain marked was seduced by a spiritual descendant of that serpent, then his lineage would be the prophetic antithesis of the redemptive lineage that would come through Seth, Enosh, Noah, Abraham, David, until reaching Jesus. Are we then facing a secret bloodline, a lineage that began in a hidden act in the land of Nod and extended through generations to become a spiritual system of rebellion, idolatry, and seduction? Could this be the reason why some ancient peoples seemed, from their founding, to be separated from God's covenant? Cain's story, then, is no longer just the story of a murder. It is the gateway to a greater mystery, the birth of a separate people, the fruit of an illicit union, whose origin remains shrouded in shadows. Cain's wife, whose name is never mentioned, may have been the symbol of something deeper, an illegitimate spiritual heritage that walks parallel to the line of redemption, but without reconciliation. And while Seth's lineage remained faithful to the divine call, invoking the name of YHWH and passing down the promise of redemption from generation to generation, Cain's lineage built cities, false altars, towers, empires, all with the appearance of greatness, but devoid of the Spirit of God. The first city founded by man was not a work of the righteous lineage, but of Cain. The name of that city, Enoch, in honor of his son. And this is no minor detail. Because the beginning of every civilization in the Bible always carries a prophetic sign. In this case, the city was not born of forgiveness, but of punishment, not of communion, but of exile. And the seed that founded it was not pure, but the fruit of an ambiguous union with a woman of unknown origin, perhaps even of an unauthorized spiritual race. Ancient rabbis discussed this extensively. In some mystical circles, there was talk of beings who wandered the earth even before Adam, created in days prior to the formation of the man of clay, made of fire or shadow, who did not receive the direct breath of life from God, but arose as remnants of an interrupted creation. Although this is not in the biblical canon, these oral traditions help understand why Cain's story seems to fit within a larger narrative, a silent war between spiritual lineages. One of the oldest and most enigmatic texts, the Book of the Wars of the Lord, mentioned in Numbers 21:14, but lost to history, might have contained records of these primordial entities. Even in Job 38:7, when God speaks to Job about creation, he mentions the sons of God, Bene Ha-Elohim, as witnesses to the foundation of the world. Who were these sons, if man had not yet been created? Some scholars suggest they were spiritual entities with a certain degree of consciousness and freedom, capable of interacting with matter, even taking physical form. Returning to Cain. If his wife came from such a line, neither fully human nor fully spiritual, then his descendants would have carried an essential distortion in their soul. Not a genetic evil, but a disconnection from the divine source. This would explain why the civilizations founded by Cain's descendants had an inclination toward idolatry, dark rituals, and power over justice. And it would also explain why God, in his wisdom, chose to preserve Seth's line as the bearer of the promise. A passage often related to this topic is Genesis 6, where it says that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful and took wives for themselves. The result of these unions were the Nephilim, giants, men of renown, but also a source of corruption. Now, what if Cain's wife was not a daughter of men, but a daughter of these beings? What if Cain's lineage did not begin with a sexual transgression, but with a deeper spiritual transgression, the mixing of two incompatible natures, that of the curse and that of the unredeemed? This theory, though controversial, has echoes in biblical history. For example, in the parable of the wheat and the tares, Jesus speaks of two seeds growing together in the world, one sown by God and another by the enemy. Both grow in the same field, both look similar, but only one will be gathered, the other will be burned. Could this be a veiled allusion to the coexistence of two spiritual lineages from the beginning? Even in Revelation, the synagogue of Satan is mentioned several times, a symbolic reference to those who claim to be something they are not. It's a constant confrontation between appearance and essence, between human genealogy and spiritual descent. And in that clash, Cain's lineage represents not just the first murderer, but the bearer of a broken heritage from its conception. If we accept this possibility, then the story of humanity is not just about people doing good or evil, but about spiritual lineages in conflict from the beginning. Lineages with origins in different acts of obedience or rebellion, some born under blessing, others under exile. But what can we learn from this today? That the true lineage that matters is not the biological one, but the spiritual one. In John 1:12-13, we are reminded that to all who received him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. This means that even if someone descends from Cain, from a line of sin, idolatry, or curse, they can be grafted into the tree of life through Christ. Because if Cain's story reveals a forbidden mixture, it also reveals something deeper, that God did not destroy Cain. He gave him a mark, not of eternal punishment, but of warning and protection. He expelled him, yes, but did not annihilate him. That reveals something about the heart of God. Even when humanity mixes the holy with the profane, he still leaves open the possibility of redemption. So what do we do with this story? With this possible forbidden race, with this union between Cain and what he should not have touched? The answer is to look inward, to ask ourselves, is there something in me that has joined with what it shouldn't? Have I allowed something to mix in my life that God has separated? Because the message of Genesis is not just historical, it is prophetic and personal. And you, what do you think of this mystery? Do you believe Cain joined with a forbidden race? What does this represent for your spiritual life today? Leave us your comment. We want to read your reflection. And if this topic touched something in you, share this video with someone else who is also seeking deep answers in the Word. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, where Scripture is revealed not only with the mind, but with the soul.